advantages operating via influence. Because of digitization and business partners leading more of their own projects, the PMO is finding that they have tremendous need and opportunity to flex how they engage with the business to certainly continue some ownership and execution support, but more so to influence others to get outcomes achieved through other means such as coaching, consulting, and brokering. Air Products is a US-based chemicals company, and they operate with an enterprise IT PMO. And as we walk through the case, I encourage you all to keep in mind what Gary Ludwig, their IT PMO, told us when we profiled them. And he said, with all the change going on at Air Products, I knew that operating a traditional PMO would be a recipe for failure. Sorry, jumped the gun there. This here is CEB's model of business engagement. It's basically a way to start delivering high-value activities rather than just focusing on execution. So depending on the business context, we adopt one of the 4 engagement postures, or multiple. So like I said before, coaching, consulting, and brokering. And if we look at the point on the right there, that you see the value of the business of each of these postures is consistent. The idea here being that we can bring value via coaching or consulting or brokering, and that can be equal to the value of our execution. So here we've organised across the 4 engagement postures a lot of the activities and the services that Air Products PMO supports, activities that are also common to most PMO or ePMO functions regardless of industry. Firstly, what Air Products did was they defined the services and activities that they did within the organisation, and secondly, they bucketed them depending on what could be offered through which posture based on the business context. For example, you'll see towards the top left there, project recovery spanning across 3 of the postures, meaning, sure, we can send in a few of our best PMs to save a project, but we can also coach and consult some of the people within our business to save a project themselves and free up some more of your time to do other things. Another example, if we look at business case creation, it's not something that we necessarily want to be doing, and at most times it actually makes more sense for our business partners to do it themselves, since they're the ones closer to value delivery and benefit realisation. So again, instead of doing it for them, we will focus supporting them through coaching and consultative methods as well. Project procurement, top right, is a prime example of a way that we could broker with the business. So for example, a PMO could be useful in connecting a project team with a vendor through our previous experience. The thing about this though is that you don't necessarily have to do it like Air Products did in terms of the activities that they offered, but we did just want to encourage you to think about how this could potentially work within your own organisations, the activities or the services that you currently offer, and as well as you start to think about what you will be offering through your digital transformations as well. One last thing I wanted to show you from Air Products is basically a really simple decision tree. They learned that it was important to give guidance so that PMs could use their judgment for which posture would be appropriate for an activity, and this more or less helps them make that decision. So if the business partner comes to the PMO and asking them for help on something, the first question the PMO would ask is, do we have the expertise to help them? No? Okay, they would broker. If yes, then can our expertise help the business partner to complete it on their own? If yes, we'd consult with them and help them through it. If not, can we teach that business partner how to complete the task in a reasonable amount of time? And if no, if it's just more time efficient to do it ourselves, we will. And if yes, we can coach them through that process. The results of implementing a posture model is actually pretty compelling. Imagine if within 2 years you were able to free up 40% of the time that you spend on execution back to 40%. Freeing up a lot more time certainly for you to focus on some of the things that make you more strategic, like leading the way with some of the digital initiatives within your organisations. Just to be clear though, we're not abandoning the delivery or the governance stuff, we're just finding new means to those ends. And one way is through what we've just gone over, through the engagement postures model. The net impact of that being more time and capacity to focus on other things like coordinating a multi-methodology world. And in a moment we'll look at another shift-left piece of work that we've profiled around orchestrating delivery and team workflows, which again is some of the newer and current ways that PMO are delivering value to the business. Zach mentioned earlier that at the beginning of each year we poll our PMO members to understand what their priorities are, and this year they told us that their number one 2017 challenge was managing a mixed methodology portfolio, and some of the other things there around engineering high-performing project teams, helping project sponsors make data-driven decisions, defining the approach to project management in a DevOps model, and supporting projects managed by business partners. We wanted to understand then what were the types of methodologies that most organisations were using, and I guess surprisingly or not surprisingly, only 7% were using strictly agile, meaning therefore that the vast majority were using a hybrid approach. And so if we just look further into what Allstate did, you can see Allstate's PMO is an IT PMO, and they identified with all the other PMO leaders that identified coordinating a multi-methodology portfolio as a struggle. And the reason why organisations are struggling to coordinate delivery teams and communication across projects, because they're using different methodologies, and there's disconnect between the language and the roles that people are playing and who's owning what decisions and things like that. And so Allstate said that we need to pull people together from different methodology teams regardless of title, and unite them through common vocabulary and common roles. And so there are really a couple of really cool approaches to what they did, so I'll just jump into how they tackled that communication problem first. The key message on this slide is simple but really important. Allstate realised that before everyone could work cohesively across the different methodologies, they first had to make sure that everyone understood each other. Their insight was that they didn't have to require everyone to speak the same language. They simply had to show how things translate across the teams. So, as you can see here, they built a glossary basically, and on this page you can see how they mapped out that equivalent vocabulary across the different methodologies so that teams could communicate and understand how their work connects, and they can start to join the dots and work more cohesively together. So on the bottom right there, we've circled a couple of elements that they've translated. So a feature in Waterfall, for example, is the same as an Epic in Scrum or XP, and a task in Scrum is equal to a pairing session in XP. This is used more as a reference guide more than anything. It's by no means a formal mandate. It's a flexible and dynamic framework that can adapt depending on the needs of the program. So we just looked at how they looked at the common vocabulary challenge, and now we'll look at how they've established common ground with regard to the roles that people play. So given variations in title, responsibilities and activities across methodologies, it's often hard to know who should be involved or who's responsible for certain decision making. And so rather than trying to call everyone the same thing or force roles into areas where they just don't fit, they built what they call the triad of voices. They've defined these as the voices that need to be in place regardless of methodology, with each voice representing a specific view and owning decisions around a specific set of questions. So the three voices you can see there are the voice of coordination, the voice of definition, and the voice of implementation. There are a couple of things that make this framework particularly powerful, and so the first part of that is that, as we call out on the left, the voices are not tied to a specific role or title. By consciously not stressing about which role should play which voice, this creates ambiguity, and the ambiguity is helpful because it allows the best person to step in regardless of which team they're coming from. So for example, in different situations, the voice of coordination could be a project manager, a scrum master, a release train engineer, or somebody else. And secondly, by clarifying the role of these voices and the types of questions they're able to answer, this also empowers teams to make decisions independently so that they can move quickly. And one of the goals of this model is essentially to empower decision making at the lowest level possible. So again, to sort of quicken up the process there. These practices at Allstate have been in place for about a year now, and so they're really just starting to collect some of those higher level metrics to see how they're tracking. However, they've already got some really good success stories and a lot of positive feedback from the business just from doing things as simple as this. So some notable benefits include identifying risks a lot quicker, increased understanding of shared requirements, a reduction in testing time up to 3 weeks, and a boost in overall business engagement. So if I can just quickly recap the value that comes from the Allstate case. Number one is to develop a common understanding of work across methodologies. Creating visibility ensures a common understanding of how work gets done. And number two, empowerment through a scalable decision-making framework or structure enables multi-methodology teams to consider each other's needs and in turn facilitate the coordination that they need to work together. So what I might do now is pass it back to Zach and turn it over to you guys for some Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Arian. So guys, there's a fair bit in what we've shown you so far, and we tried to show you a lot and kind of a lot of kind of context and a couple of like cool examples which we think are relevant regardless of industry or geography. We think these are a couple of things that can be implemented in a government space because they are fairly simple. I know that the slides we will share with you guys. I'll open up to any questions, and then any questions that you have post sort of today, happy to provide my details and we can get in touch individually as well. Probably just I'll preface saying that we are by no means experts in any of this. We have the research and advisory team behind us. So if there's any questions that we can't answer, then we're happy to go back to the advisory and research team to answer any of these. Anything from the group?
Maybe just a comment. I really appreciated the simplicity of the language that Irene was using through that presentation, both in the slides and in the commentary. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that we have been guilty of. We confound people with the complexity of the words and the processes that we use. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think that's a big part of, and we talk about sort of the way that we support all corporate functions. Sure. So communications and sales is an area that we share a lot of the best practice research with everybody else. So when it comes to roles like the CIO or the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, who are heavily embedded in technical jargon, how do we kind of decouple all of that and work out what's the business language that we need to present to? Actually, that was one of the things we talked about initially when the first topic was coming up, as we may be able to come in and present about how to communicate with senior stakeholders, CEs, ministers and the like. What does it look like? And perhaps that's something we can talk about down the track. But thank you, certainly appreciate that.
Do you think there's a real threat about Agile diminishing the importance of PMO functions? I mean, Agile doesn't look after the governance of the organisation, it doesn't provide portfolio reporting. I was attending a one-day workshop yesterday on what is Agile, and there's 3 main kind of streams, and some of them are quite philosophical.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite a dangerous thing to sort of be saying.
And so your question is Agile diminishing the importance of the PMO?
Yeah, just when you had that stat there, that 87% or whatever it was, we're using Agile now, we don't need PMO.
We would argue that no, I don't think it diminishes the importance of the PMO, but the PMO needs to adapt to remain relevant.
Which you reinforce with a multi-methodology.
Correct, yeah. So being able to, it's a really important kind of skill, and that's why it was number one on our agenda poll. Basically, when we set the agenda each year, that's why it was number one. People like that's the critical problem at the moment for a traditional PMO, and even in the first case study from Air Products, that was what Gary Ludwig, who was the head of PMO, was saying. If I continue running my traditional PMO, then it's going to be irrelevant in no time. But I also argue that Agile is not necessarily just methodology. It's a mindset. It's a real cultural or climate shift for an organisation, not just PMO. And if we can be the drivers of that mindset shift and that change, then it's going to increase speed and flexibility across the organisation, which is going to keep the PMO really relevant.
Yeah, the big question that came out yesterday is how does the leadership team adopt agile principles to governance?
Yeah.
So, the project community is obviously quite keen on agile and all sorts of other methodologies, but
Yeah.
it needs some degree of leadership.
And one of the studies we did probably 5 or 6 years ago, which is still super relevant, is around how to scale agile. And we talk about sort of the scaled agile framework. But what are the traditional roadblocks or pitfalls as you scale agile more and more? Our research suggests that in the first sort of 15% of projects that you're doing in an agile methodology or an agile way, you're going to get the speed and quality gains because you're setting up target teams. There's a select, hand-picked number of projects or programs that you're running agile. But as you scale that over, 15, 20, 30% of projects, it actually starts to slow down. And what do we need to do to be able to adapt to that? And how do we incorporate other practices? So it's not just the PMO and delivery side of things. How do we include enterprise architecture? How do we include risk and security and embed that in the agile process as well? Big challenge.
So this presentation really reflects the journey we're on at MSD right now. It's like a mirror. And I think one of the key challenges, because I'm an IT PMO and we're looking to transform the way we are to adapt with Agile in the delivery part. But the big challenge is from a governance point of view, when I think about lean principles and not avoiding waste and not going over the top in terms of spending a lot of time on reporting or a massive document, is there kind of has anyone done any research on what is the minimum to tick the box when it comes to compliance or getting a whatever rating, ICR rating, or complying with Treasury and ministers? That's where kind of the gap is in knowledge.
Yeah, and maybe I have to take this one off, but there's a few case studies I think I might be able to share with you around how other organisations, and it's not specific to New Zealand government, so it's not going to tackle the what Treasury requires from a compliance standpoint, but it sort of looks at what's the minimum documentation or minimum level of governance or health check that needs to be applied over Agile, and then it compares it to what do we need for waterfall as well. So if you're doing traditional waterfall delivery, then what's the minimum, what's the traditional documentation required from that, and it sort of compares the two, because a lot of the time and a lot of the PMO members we talk to is Agile's not a excuse not to document, and how do we provide that kind of just framework to be able to have sort of just enough governance.
I have a bit of a problem with the whole conversation. It kind of seems to miss the fundamental point of feature-based delivery. The point of feature-based delivery is to minimise the size of the unit of delivery to actually reduce risk as a systemic thing. So it's not to not have governance. I think to answering the person's question before, the accountability still sits where the accountability sits. It's actually more damaging in my mind that PMOs think that they have more of an ownership in that space than perhaps they do, because at the end of the day, it's about how the owner of that accountability feels comfortable that they risk is being managed, and a lot of this conversation often comes down to what we do or don't have, as if we're treating all work as if it's the same thing. Some things are much more risky than others. Some features are much bigger than others. There has to be a systemic solution to the way we manage that overall risk picture. As much as I like to, kind of keep it simple, the reality is, I think if you oversimplify that conversation, you miss the nuances of risk management at scale. Anyway.
Yeah, most definitely. And in isolation, this isn't the solution. There's a lot more to it.
It's not so much aimed at the presentation, it's aimed more at just at the questions around that whole kind of governance piece, and I guess in particular the role. I quite liked actually in the presentation the fact that they were the PMO was deciding its posture, and I really love the word posture in approaching a particular problem, because quite often we take a control-based posture as the first response, and it may not necessarily be the right thing. I mean, from a design thinking perspective, right, behavioural science perspective, make good things easy, make bad things a little bit harder. We often forget about making the good things easy.
Yeah.
You know, so what is the right behaviour, and make the flow of that as easy as possible. That way you need less control-based governance, and you get better outcomes. It's about getting flow.
Yeah, and that sort of posture approach is one that we've preached, not just for the PMO, but we think it's relevant for sort of all corporate functions. Yeah. So just what is the business context that we're involved in here, and then what is the right posture for that particular situation? Not just for PMO, but for everything. It could be for finance, HR, for the broader IT team as well. Which we
It's
talk
kind of
about.
governance sets an entire environment, right, in which we work. There's not just one lever to it. There are a number of different elements that have to be set, and you have to look at it systemically, I think.
Yeah, most definitely.
I think for me that was my biggest kind of takeaway from this conversation, and I think by the sounds of things, as a community, we're all asking the same sorts of questions in terms of relevance and what areas we get involved in. And I really like the slide about moving to the left, because it is how you kind of change and adapt to what's being presented. And I think in the delivery space, there's obviously a lot of work going on about how do we get better results quicker, how do we adapt to business. But I think around PMOs and ePMOs, that role of looking across the enterprise and providing that level of independence absolutely hits the mark for me, because that's the value point that's kind of missing otherwise as we're kind of going deep into delivery on separate things. So I think
And there's a lot of things that come on the back of that is things like project and portfolio prioritisation. So how do we take a really objective view to prioritising the projects that we are going to deliver within the portfolio? And then there's the benefits realisation and metric side of things as well. We talked a little bit earlier about how do we measure things other than financial impact. One of the big things, and we talk about this around, so we support all corporate functions. One that we do support is around like customer experience and customer contact. And so the big metric there is customer effort. What's the customer effort score? How do we, if we can make it as effortless, make the experience as effortless as possible, how do you quantify that? Because it's someone going in and it's just being easy to use and they're satisfied with that particular outcome. But how do you measure that? What does that look like?
I think somewhat incorporated too is this convergence with organisational change management as well. There seems to be quite a bit of rhetoric around, which I think resonates as well, because that's a component that kind of seems to sit somewhat separate in most organisations, and that kind of needs to come together as well.
Yeah, because this isn't just the PMO making changes. This is organisation and system change that's happening.
Yeah, just to pick up on that, and the system change, I think, is kind of the next level up, and I think ePMOs can really help across the government system, because we have that extra complicated layer that needs to be addressed of we need cross-government solutions, for various things, especially ICT solutions. And the ePMOs probably can perform that kind of brokering function, and when things need to happen in their organization, identify, probably by linking in with other ePMOs, where else in the system things need to also happen, kind of get a bit of coherence and connection.
That's not always easy, but
No.
It seems like it looks like it can be a little easier here in New Zealand. We work across a number of different jurisdictions, and I can tell you that's not easy in Australia.
Okay.
I sort of fully agree with the fact that you guys are in a really strong position.
And I suppose one thing I'm getting at is that it's very complicated, but ePMOs probably are in a good space to kind of help navigate that, for things being delivered in there.
Which is hence the shift to the left.
Yeah.
Let's not get caught up in the, not necessarily low value activities, but let's do the things that we are, unique. What's that comparative advantage? And that is comparative advantage, particularly for an ePMO.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure of my question. I think it's more for Treasury, but we're, like our colleagues in MSD, we're kind of moving right down the consultancy coaching route, which is kind of great to see for environment. It does feel though, when it comes to GPP benefits reporting, things like that, we kind of get dragged in a little bit. How does kind of Treasury anticipate working with the wider business group with the EPMOs to move more to that coaching consultancy space?
Great question.
That's not me.
Yeah, I suppose, Good question. So the benefits work in government. Multi-strand, we have a program with a small p to try and support you to push to have better benefits from your investments in the first place, and then actually know if you're meeting those. And so, this community, the benefits community is one way, through our guidance templates, through the discussions with ministers. We're looking at some other innovative things to kickstart, we'll start later in the year, and maybe benefit clinics, so you can come along and actually bring example investments along and get some of the experts who are around the table here to actually critique and give you, feedback on the benefits from some of the things you're undertaking. If we're not doing enough, there's only a small amount of resource, and the power of the expertise really sits around government and in the room, then let us know and we can, look to do more. We are resource constrained. If there's work you'd like us to support you in MSD, happy to come and have a discussion around what we could do within your agency. We try and target, the system and agency level. It's just capacity-wise, we can't be involved in every single individual investment, so it's trying to empower your EPMO and other stakeholders if we can to have that capability. We've delivered a benefits owner training, which I know a lot of you have been on in the last few months, really trying to target those who are at the senior leadership level around their role, being benefits owner. And later this year we'd like to develop a benefit practitioner training for the people at the more granular level actually doing the hard yards of coming up with the benefits, and trying to support them to come up with those quality benefits, understand their role and how they can set themselves up for success. So hopefully there's a lot happening. If you're not aware of that, then happy to have a conversation separately outside of here, and if there's other ideas on what we could be doing to help you in the benefit space, very open to that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. I think I'm not trying to solution here, but we may need to start thinking about if EPMO isn't going to be the direct connector around this kind of data space, not just to be but Treasury may need to start thinking about how it might access key benefit owners, or how that might communicate.
No, good point. Yeah.
Can I just add to that? I suspect what happens is what might happen in organisations who move to more BAU type accountability for is that still probably need to maintain an enterprise period. And that actually makes a difference too, in the fact that that's going to difference for future PMOs, and that they'll have the advantage of being a legitimate source of information. So it is a balance, I suspect, between being able to consult and being able to
Hopefully we're not the word compliance. I hope we're not the compliance. You have to. Hopefully this data is important for you, the benefits data in your own organisation, to show that you're delivering against your outcomes and your strategy. If you're not achieving your benefits, you're not going to achieve what you're trying to drive as an organisation. So the push, for ministers in Treasury is to try and make it so they have that visibility of our investments are actually gaining the value and the benefits that the investors are asking for from them to achieve the changes, the digital transformation, that was being talked about today. So hopefully that, as EPMOs and benefit practitioners, there's a strong, focus on and interest and effort at the moment across government. If you'd like more from us, happy to have a conversation of how we can support that. Did that answer your question?
Can I feed into that just on the reporting side? So obviously there's a lot of changes in how things are getting delivered. I think there's sort of more decentralization, both system level and also in how things are getting delivered, and also inside of agencies. So, but I think the interesting thing is that almost means that there needs to be more transparency at a system level of what's happening. It can happen how it needs to happen. The reporting also, we need to kind of flex, I suppose, and so that conversation can be had as things change. But there's almost that need for almost more transparency at the system level to just kind of keep track of where everything's going. It doesn't mean command and control, it means that stuff is now off and able to deliver however it's going to be delivered, but somehow we need to aggregate it and see what's happening so that, as a whole, we're doing what we need to do. It's kind of like,
I think the answer to that is to take that slide, which is in A4, chuck it up to A3 and shift it even further to the left.
Yes.
And we actually change the name.
That's
from
interesting.
Project Management Office, or Portfolio Management Office, to a Portfolio View. And that really shifts the whole concept to where I think it needs to be.
That's interesting.
I say I think that sounds a bit grandiose, but
No.
I think PMO is it's an expression that's grown out of our legacy IT environment. We're moving well away from that now across government and across enterprises, and I think we do need to change the language to actually change the mindset, change the way that we observe the problem, and therefore the way that we respond to it.
That's interesting.
I'm very much with my man over here in Scotland.
Just mindful of the time, you know, I've taken a lot out. There's some very thought-provoking and challenging stuff here. You know, I think you're right in saying, you know, helpful. It sounds like there's resonate, you know, MSD saying we're on that journey already. This is very helpful. It's great to hear. You know, we, in a way, operate the all-of-government on a pseudo PMO. You know, we're currently a bit behind. Our frameworks in BBC don't yet accommodate agile very well or iterative approaches. We're looking to update that Better Business Case framework to better fit with those approaches, which you know, we're a bit behind with that. And I think there's a lot of work across government. You know, the benefits community. I am keen to turn that the discussion about organisational change management, how it needs to be linked together. It's not seen as a separate function. Very supportive of that. So that's a push I want to make in the benefits community to blend that into an organisational change management and benefits community moving forward. Yeah, I think if we could get those case studies on the agile versus waterfall sort of stuff from yourselves, that would be fantastic. Really appreciate you coming along today. So thank you very much for the presentation today. If you could show a round of applause. I'll get provide Zach's details when we send out the details today, and if there are any more technical questions, you can get in touch directly with him. The next benefits community is on the 4th of August, and we've got Frankie from Inland Revenue working with materials that we've sourced to do a discussion on optimism bias of benefits and how to overcome the optimism bias we all put into our benefits. So I think that will be a good, robust discussion about that. It's a problem we see regularly. The next portfolio community of interest on the 11th of August, the week after, we'll pull that one together. Looking at the community really flows from today's discussions about how do we support and set up for success and deliver cross-agency investments. And so that's going to be the topic of that next portfolio community of interest on the 11th. So yeah, thanks for today's speakers, and yeah, hope you don't get too wet getting back to your work today. Cheers.